bigger models, they said the Mark 9 6-inch gun, the 6-inch gun, about 57mm, the size of a hole at the end of the barrel. Most other European
of course, those cubes are not going to make it for a signal.
The size of a hole at the barrel, 57mm, 6-pounder. That was a powerful gun, a very, very good gun for the British tanks. But it only got at the Valentine in 1943, and it sees a little service like it made a lot of Valentines in Britain, and so did the Canadians. Most of the Canadian stock of Valentines was sent straight out to the Russians. And the Russians were obviously a bit snippy about our allied tanks, but in this case, like the Valentines, didn't rely on them. They didn't get much of it in terms of its firepower or its armor. It's on a suspension on an earlier there's the Valentine tank coming off the arena. An infantry tank, it ended up actually being used for a number of different roles, and in the museum you can see when they came out of service to the guns,
So what's this on top there?
we ended up using them as well for things like
in and out.
some were made, they were 17 guns on it.
I don't care what anyone says, it's in 34. Fantastic. Probably the best.
The tank starts the war with a much smaller gun, the T-34 76.
.2.
Gun, .2. This one's a bigger gun, a 3.2. Now the T-34 is a famously crude vehicle. The Russian system is keep it simple. Sloped armour, by sloping armour, it doesn't really just things like ricochet the round off, it also thickens the amount of armour that an oncoming horizontal round's got to penetrate. So in other words, you thicken the armour without having to waste the same width of armour vertically will be thinner. There's less amount of armour for the round coming in to penetrate. Crystal suspension, which means it doesn't go to the armour. That means that they've got springs inside the chamber or the side of it that is very wide plane very, very important inside. But that didn't matter. Don't forget, Stalin's a dictator. He kills more his own people than Hitler ever does. So if you can you're off to the Russians, got you off the gulag, or
bad as the JST.
trying to find things in your feet. So no, I really
German tank get about 10 shots on you for your one. Basically. It's such a bad design flaw.
So the next tank we're going to bring on for you is a German tank. The German army comes to war, or gets ready for war, from 1933 onwards. They've already been doing experiments with tanks after the Versailles Peace Treaty. The Versailles Peace Treaty in 1980 banned the Germans from producing tanks at all. Hitler comes to power in 1933, rips up the Versailles Peace Treaty. The German army basically says that we'll be ready for war in about 10 years' time. They make tanks called Panzer Is and Panzer IIs, are used as really training tanks. They want to go to war with a Panzer III and Panzer IV. By the time Hitler jumps the gun and goes to war in 1939, Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs are coming off the production line, but they just don't have enough of them. But luckily for Hitler, he's invaded Czechoslovakia. He can use about a third of his tank fleet in 1940 a captured Czechoslovakian tank, so they can be used as well. Now this particular tank, this is a Panzer III Mark L, and the Germans go through a number of different iterations, in other words, different models of their tanks, and all the time they're trying to improve on them. The very early models are almost like training versions, and they're testing the water with how a tank should work. This model, by this time, they've got a very good version of it. This is the L model, and this particular one was actually done up specially for service in North Africa. It's what they call a Tropen or TP model, which means that they have extra filters to clean the dusty air in the desert and try and keep the engine a bit cooler. This tank was captured by the British and brought back to Chertsey, the same as our Tiger tank, for evaluation. And we know a fair bit about this one from the records. We know it was actually taken to Benghazi in North Africa on a ship called the Lerica, and it arrived there because of very efficient German records that survived. We know it arrived on the 18th of July 1942, and it was given to the 15th Panzer Division in August 1942. Almost certainly fought at the Battle of Anheuser, but we don't know exactly when it was captured. We've got photographs of it being bombed. In other words, all the engines were taken out by local labour sometime after its capture, and then it was put on a ship, sent to Great Britain, and evaluated as I said at Chertsey. It was kept in running order, and it's been restored by our own workshop team, so it's in the condition and the look that it would have had when it served in North Africa there. Long barrel 50mm gun, high velocity gun there. They started the war with a medium velocity 50mm gun, and again, if you look at the tank, it's got extra armour bolted on the front. Like so many vehicles, they get improvements during their service life, if they survive, of course. So many tanks, they're only in action for a couple of months before they're knocked out. Now we thought we'd bring on another vehicle for you now that was actually captured in North Africa at about the same time as our Tiger in Tunisia, and it's another vehicle brought back for evaluation. Not a tank, this is something they call a Kettenkrad, and being Germans they tended to rather over-engineer things, and this particular vehicle, even though it's relatively small, it was kind of almost like a battlefield tug. Some of them were used for pulling trailers behind full of ammunition, especially used by German paratroop forces. It was brought down in gliders, and it gave a sort of sense of mobility and a small, think of it like a small tractor for being able to pull things around on the battlefield. Some were used to pull very light 37mm anti-tank guns. The German Luftwaffe used them almost as tugs on their airfield sometimes. This particular one was captured from a group of German paratroopers under Ramke, a German colonel out in North Africa, and it's still got the original markings on it. Again, it was photographed in North Africa, brought back to Britain, and evaluated here, and it was another one of those vehicles that came down to the Tank Museum. It was fully restored only a few years ago, and it's still got some of the original damage on it. And we just thought we'd bring that one out. The whole idea of this, by the way, is the steering wheel at the front doesn't really help the vehicle steer that much. What you do is by turning the steering wheel, it actually slows one of the tracks down on one side or the other, and they speed up, and that helps you steer. You can actually drive this thing if you didn't have the front wheel on at all. It's often mentioned about German engineering. We very much admire some of their superb engineering, but in wartime, this overproduction, the over-engineered vehicles, contrasting vehicles like this and things like the Russian T-34, the Russians kept it simple for very good reasons, mass production. And just this little vehicle here, those tracks going around, each one of the joints on the tracks has what they call needle bearings in there, which means, again, a huge amount of production, time and effort and energy goes into making a very high quality vehicle. But in wartime, quite often it's numbers that count. So again, it's this issue of making things very, very well, 1,000-year life, all those stories, and yet of course at the same time they need many more of them than they were making. So the argument is often that really the Russians and certainly the Americans have got the right idea of keeping production simple so they can make so much. Now the next tank we're bringing on, the classic American tank of World War II, certainly the tank that saved the Western Allies in terms of production. This is the Sherman tank, and this particular tank, this was the one that we lent to the filmmakers with our team up on the set of the Fury tank, and we kept it as it looked like on the film set. So this normally is, or for the last year, has been in our Fury display in the museum. With a Brad Pitt dump sat at the top. It's not there today, obviously, so you can see it running around outside. If you do want to go down, have a look at that Fury display. It explains a little bit there about what it was like on the film set and why we got involved with this particular movie. Now, this particular Sherman, it starts production with a 75mm gun. They make so many, the Americans. They're in about 1940, they'd only made about 300 tanks. By the end of the war, they'd made over 50,000 tanks. So I will stop. I've told you the story already, so you can have a look at this, hear it, and take the photographs. It's going to do about half the 20.
I'll have to plagiarise some of your photos because I can't take any photos. I send as many as you want here. I've got some close-ups of your boy. It's a bit shaky because I'm cold. I feel like I'm going to vomit any minute.
So that's Tiger 131. As it moves around there, very sophisticated steering system. It's going to park up there for a while when we finish the straight coverage. It's tremendously powerful. Please remember though, not that many of them, 1,300 Tigers, and there was something like 100,000 Sherman. So, huge cycle. Driving around the room at the same time now. This is our Centurion tank, and the key thing about the Centurion is in Britain we relied heavily on the American Sherman in the Second World War, but we finally get our A31 tank, the Centurion tank, right just at the end of the war. The Mark I Centurion was rushed out to Germany in May of 1945. It's a very, very good design of tank. It just misses the end of the war, but it goes on into British Army service and service all around the world. And this particular one is a late model. It was one that was converted into something they call an AVRE, Armoured Vehicle Royal Engineer. And if you look at it as it comes round, it's got plenty of bolts, fixture points on the front glassite plate. That's because it used to have a dozer blade or other fixtures put on there, because the Centurion in British Army service, the very last models, only came out in the early 2000s, and that was called the P.O.V, the Beach Armoured Recovery Vehicle. The South African Army, they're still using the Centurion tank, they call it Tank. They've added extra armour, they've changed the engines like many countries over time, and it was a tremendously successful tank. Why? It's got a very good gun, that's a 105mm gun, it's got on there, the old 7 gun. By the Americans, Germans, lots of other countries used it, very powerful gun, it had good armour protection, and for the first time we had a tank engine. This is actually the nuclear engine that flew in the Spitfire, and what they did, the Merlin, as in the Spitfire, they derated it, called it the Meteor, and at last we had enough oomph to power a tank around. The problem was it was hugely thirsty. This tank, early days, could only go about 6 miles before it was refueling. But it went through 13 marks and it was sold all around the world. So
No, if I'm sick, I'll be sick there, not on you.
That's right.
When he said flat out that the Tiger 1 was faster than the Sherman, I found that a little bit hard to believe. Because it was evaluated and tested, and its maximum speed was 23.5 at the best, I think. Maybe 26. What's happening? The engine getting too hot. It's just cutting down here for it like they do the King Tiger at Sherman. You seen them drive that?
Get it on, don't they?
Yeah.